Lying. It's one of the most intriguing paradoxes of human behavior. On one hand, we're taught from an early age that honesty is a virtue, one of the cornerstones of integrity. On the other hand, lying is something nearly all of us do, often more frequently than we'd like to admit. From small, inconsequential fibs to elaborate fabrications, dishonesty is woven into the fabric of our lives. But why? Why do we lie, even when the truth might seem like the simpler or even the better option? In this episode, we're delving deep into the psychology of dishonesty. We'll explore the reasons people lie, the impact it has on our relationships and society, and even what happens in our brains when we choose deception over truth. Along the way, we'll examine the blurry lines between harmful lies, harmless white lies, and the moral dilemmas we face when the truth seems too painful or too risky to reveal. But this isn't just about uncovering the reasons behind dishonesty. It's also about understanding ourselves. Dishonesty is, at its core, a profoundly human behavior. It reflects our fears, our desires, our instincts for survival, and sometimes even our capacity for empathy. By examining why we lie, we uncover a deeper truth, not just about dishonesty, but about the human condition itself. So join me as we navigate the fascinating landscape of dishonesty. Together, we'll uncover the truth behind the lies, and perhaps gain a better understanding of how to build a more honest relationship with ourselves and with others.
Hello and welcome to The Psychology of Us with Professor R.J. Starr, where we explore the mind's influence on life, relationships, and society. R.J. Starr is an existential psychologist, professor, and author dedicated to exploring the core challenges of human existence, how we find meaning, embrace responsibility, and navigate life's challenges. Known for a thought-provoking yet accessible approach, RJ inspires listeners to cultivate self-awareness, emotional intelligence, authenticity, and purpose. This podcast is designed for all psychology enthusiasts, practitioners, students, and anyone curious about why we think, feel, and behave the way we do. Each episode unpacks theories, explores complex questions, and offers insights that deepen understanding of the human experience. So settle in, stay curious, and discover the psychology of us.
Lying is as old as humanity itself. It's a behavior that transcends cultures, time periods, and social structures. At its most basic level, a lie is a deliberate misrepresentation of reality, words or actions designed to deceive. But not all lies are created equal. From the harmless fibs we tell to spare someone's feelings, to the intricate falsehoods that rewrite entire narratives, dishonesty takes on many forms, each with its own motives and consequences. Let's start by defining some of the most common types of lies. The outright lie is perhaps the easiest to recognize. It's a deliberate fabrication, a direct contradiction of the truth. For example, claiming you've completed a task when you haven't, or inventing details to bolster a story. Outright lies tend to be bold, clear-cut acts of deception. And then there are white lies, the seemingly innocent untruths we often tell to avoid hurting someone or to smooth over an awkward social situation. When someone asks, "Do I look okay?" and you respond, "You look great," even if you're not entirely convinced, you're engaging in a white lie. These lies are typically driven by a desire to preserve harmony or spare feelings. Another common form is the lie of omission, where the deception lies not in what you say, but in what you don't say. By strategically leaving out certain details, you can mislead someone without ever uttering a falsehood. Lies of omission can be particularly damaging because they often feel less intentional, but their effects can be just as severe as outright lies. What makes lying such a universal human behavior? Part of the answer lies in our brains. From an evolutionary perspective, deception has played a crucial role in our survival. Consider the art of camouflage in the animal kingdom. A bird pretending to be injured to lead predators away from its nest, or a predator using stealth to trick its prey. While these aren't lies in the human sense, They reflect the biological advantage of deception as a survival tool. For human beings, the ability to deceive may have evolved alongside our capacity for complex social interactions. After all, navigating relationships, hierarchies, and alliances often requires a certain degree of strategic misrepresentation. However, lying isn't merely a tool of survival, it's also deeply influenced by culture and society. In some cultures, maintaining social harmony is valued above all else, and small lies may be seen as necessary to avoid conflict or embarrassment. In other cultures, honesty is prized, even when it's uncomfortable. This cultural lens shapes not only how we view lies, but also how we feel about telling them. A lie that might be frowned upon in one context would be considered a kindness in another. It's also important to acknowledge that dishonesty exists on a spectrum. Some lies are impulsive, told in the heat of the moment, often without much thought. Others are calculated, crafted with precision to achieve a specific goal. One might excuse a split-second fib. The intentionality of premeditated lies often carries a heavier moral weight. But why does this matter? Understanding the nature of lies is the first step in recognizing their presence in our lives. It allows us to reflect on when and why we might choose deception over truth, and how those choices align or conflict with our values. So, now let's dive deeper into the psychological motivations behind dishonesty, exploring what drives us to lie, even when we value honesty. Because if honesty is a virtue, why do we so often stray from it? The truth is, lying serves a purpose. It's not always the right choice, but it often feels like the necessary one. Whether it's to protect ourselves, safeguard others, or to manipulate circumstances to our advantage, dishonesty is rarely without motive. To understand why people lie, we must examine the psychological drivers that push us toward deception. At the heart of many lies is self-preservation. This is perhaps the most instinctive reason for dishonesty. When faced with the possibility of punishment, judgment, or humiliation, lying can feel like a shield. For example, a child might deny breaking a vase, fearing the consequences of confessing. This behavior is rooted in a survival mechanism, an attempt to avoid pain, whether physical or emotional. Closely related is self-promotion, where the goal isn't just to avoid harm, but to enhance one's image. In social settings, people often exaggerate their accomplishments, downplay their struggles, or craft narratives that make them appear more competent, interesting, or desirable. This kind of dishonesty is often driven by insecurity or the desire to fit in. For instance, someone might inflate their job title or embellish a story to gain respect or admiration. There's also a surprising connection between dishonesty and altruism. Many lies are told not for personal gain, but to protect someone else's feelings or well-being. These are the lies that often fall under the category of white lies, telling a friend their presentation was great, even if it wasn't, or reassuring a loved one when the truth might cause unnecessary worry. These are examples of lies motivated by empathy. While they may seem harmless, they raise an important ethical question. Is it ever okay to prioritize kindness over honesty? Beneath these motives lies the concept of cognitive dissonance, a psychological phenomenon that plays a key role in justifying dishonesty. Cognitive dissonance occurs when there's a conflict between our actions and our self-image. If we see ourselves as honest people but find ourselves lying, it creates discomfort. To reduce this discomfort, we often rationalize our lies, telling ourselves they're justified or insignificant. For example, we might convince ourselves that everyone does it, or that the lie was for the greater good. Evolutionary psychology offers another perspective. Deception may have roots in our distant past, where outsmarting an adversary or concealing a weakness could mean the difference between survival and extinction. In a modern context, this instinct manifests in subtler ways, like bluffing in negotiations or concealing vulnerabilities in a competitive environment. Lying, in this sense, can be seen as a tool, a way to navigate the complexities of human interaction. Social and environmental factors also shape our tendency to lie. High-stakes situations, power imbalances, and even societal expectations can all encourage dishonesty. In competitive workplaces, for example, employees might exaggerate their contributions to secure recognition or advancement. Similarly, in relationships, individuals may lie to avoid confrontation or maintain peace. Understanding why we lie requires recognizing that dishonesty often feels easier, safer, or more rewarding than the truth. It's not always a conscious decision. Sometimes it's a reflex, a way of managing immediate circumstances without fully considering the long-term consequences. But while these motives help explain dishonesty, they don't excuse it. Lies, no matter how well-intentioned, can have lasting repercussions. In the next session, we'll explore what happens in the brain when we lie and how repeated dishonesty can change the way we think, feel, and behave. So, what is the neuroscience of lying? What happens in the brain when we tell a lie? Dishonesty is not just a psychological or a moral act. It's also a neurological event. Understanding the neuroscience behind lying reveals how our brains process deception, the effects of repeated dishonesty, and why some people lie more easily than others. This exploration sheds light on the biological underpinnings of a behavior as ancient as human itself. So when we lie, several regions of the brain spring into action, primarily the prefrontal cortex, which is the area responsible for decision-making, self-control, and complex thought process. Excuse me. Crafting a lie requires more cognitive effort than telling the truth. We must suppress the truth, create a believable alternative, and manage the anxiety that often accompanies deception. This multitasking places significant demands on the prefrontal cortex, making lying a resource-intensive process. You may have heard the expression, it's harder to lie than it is, it's more difficult to lie, it takes more energy to lie than it does to tell the truth. That's that prefrontal cortex in action. Another key player in dishonesty is the amygdala, the brain's emotional processing center. You see, the amygdala is closely associated with feelings of guilt and fear, emotions that often accompany lying. When we tell a lie for the first time, the amygdala typically produces a strong emotional response, warning us that we're engaging in something wrong or risky. This reaction is why many people experience physical symptoms such as sweating, increased heart rate, or dry mouth when they lie. However, repeated dishonesty can dull this response. Studies have shown that as individuals lie more frequently, the amygdala's activity diminishes, a phenomenon known as desensitization to dishonesty. In other words, the more we lie, the less guilty or anxious we feel about it. This reduced emotional response can make lying easier and more habitual over time, creating a slippery slope where small lies evolve into bigger ones. The reward system in the brain also plays a significant role in dishonesty. You see, when lying achieves a desired outcome, which may be avoiding punishment, gaining admiration, or securing a reward, it activates the brain's dopamine pathways, reinforcing the behavior. This reward mechanism can make lying addictive for some individuals, as the positive reinforcement encourages repeated deception. Interestingly, research using brain imaging techniques such as functional MRI has revealed that lying involves more neural activity than telling the truth. When participants in these studies lied, their brains showed heightened activity in regions associated with cognitive control and conflict resolution, such as the anterior cingulate cortex. This increased activity reflects the mental effort required to fabricate and maintain a lie while suppressing the truth. Again, it takes more energy to lie than to tell the truth. It's also worth noting that not all brains respond to dishonesty in the same way. Personality traits such as impulsivity or a lack of empathy can influence how easily someone lies. For example, people with higher levels of narcissism or psychopathy may exhibit reduced activity in the amygdala when lying, indicating a weaker emotional response to their actions. This difference may explain why some people seem to lie effortlessly and without remorse. The brain's adaptability further complicates the picture. With practice, lying can become more automatic and less mentally taxing. Skilled liars often show less cognitive strain during deception, as their brains become more efficient at managing the demands of dishonesty. This adaptability highlights the brain's capacity to normalize behaviors, even those that conflict with societal or personal values. So you see, understanding the neuroscience of lying reveals not only the complexity of dishonesty, but also its potential consequences. Repeated lying can reshape our neural pathways, making deception a more ingrained and instinctive behavior. It also underscores the importance of self-awareness and ethical reflection in countering the natural tendencies that can lead us down a path of dishonesty. So now let's examine the costs of dishonesty, how lying affects relationships, societal trust, and even the liar's own mental and emotional well-being. Because while dishonesty may feel like an easy solution in the moment, the consequences can ripple far beyond the initial lie. Whether the goal is self-preservation, self-promotion, or sparing someone's feelings, the costs of dishonesty often outweigh the perceived benefits. These costs are not just external, affecting relationships and societal structures, but are also deeply internal, leaving lasting marks on the liar's mental and emotional well-being. One of the most immediate and personal costs of dishonesty is the erosion of trust in relationships. Trust is the foundation of any meaningful connection, and lies, regardless of their size, act like cracks in that foundation. When someone discovers they've been lied to, even about something trivial, it can create a sense of betrayal and uncertainty. The victim of the lie may begin to question the liar's intentions and integrity, leading to tension and distance. Rebuilding trust after dishonesty is often a slow and difficult process, as the shadow of past lies can linger, coloring future interactions. I have experienced this myself personally on both sides of that equation, and I'll bet many of you have too. Beyond personal relationships, dishonesty has broader societal consequences. A society functions on an implicit agreement of mutual honesty. Contracts are honored, laws are followed, and words hold meaning. When lies become pervasive, this social fabric begins to fray. Public scandals, corporate fraud, and misinformation campaigns demonstrate how dishonesty can undermine institutions, erode confidence in leadership, and breed cynicism. Trust, once it's been lost at a societal level, can take generations to rebuild. The effects of dishonesty don't just stop with those who are deceived. For the liar, there is a significant psychological toll. Telling a lie often triggers feelings of guilt and anxiety, especially for individuals with a strong sense of morality. These emotions can manifest physically, causing stress-related symptoms like headaches, fatigue, or a racing heart. Over time, habitual dishonesty can lead to chronic stress, weight gain, as liars must constantly juggle their fabrications, fearing exposure or the consequences of being caught. Moreover, dishonesty can create a cognitive burden. Keeping track of lies requires mental energy, because the liar must remember what they said and to whom and how their story aligns with reality. This mental juggling act can be exhausting, leading to decision fatigue and reduced cognitive efficiency. Studies have even shown that people who lie frequently perform worse on tasks that require focus and memory, as their mental resources are diverted toward maintaining their deception. Dishonesty can have also profound effects on an individual's self-concept. Every lie, no matter how small, chips away at the liar's sense of internal integrity. Over time, this can create a disconnect between the person they aspire to be and the person they feel they are. This dissonance can lead to feelings of self-loathing or a diminished sense of self-worth, and it sneaks up. It doesn't happen all at once. Ironically, the lies told to boost one's image or protect oneself often cause the very harm they were meant to avoid. In some cases, dishonesty becomes a slippery slope. What starts out as a small, seemingly harmless fib can escalate into a pattern of deception with increasingly significant consequences. This phenomenon, known as the compounding effect of lies, occurs because each lie creates a need for more lies to sustain the illusion. Over time, that web of deceit becomes so intricate that it's nearly impossible to untangle, leaving the liar trapped in their own fabrication. It's important to recognize that dishonesty doesn't only harm others, it also isolates the liar. Lies create barriers, as the liar must constantly monitor what they've revealed and to whom. This can lead to a sense of disconnection and loneliness, as genuine connections require vulnerability and honesty. In attempting to protect themselves, liars often sacrifice the very intimacy and understanding they crave. The costs of dishonesty serve as a reminder of the importance of truth in our lives. While the truth can be uncomfortable or inconvenient, it ultimately fosters trust, connection, and personal growth. So now let's explore the complexities of moral dilemmas surrounding dishonesty, examining situations where lies might be justified and how we can navigate the fine line between honesty and compassion. Dishonesty is often viewed as morally wrong, but reality isn't always so black and white. Sometimes lying feels like the most compassionate or necessary option. These moral gray areas challenge our perceptions of honesty and force us to grapple with the complexities of human relationships and ethical decision-making. To navigate this fine line, we must explore situations where lies might be justified and the underlying principles that guide these decisions. One of the most debated areas of dishonesty is the concept of prosocial lies, those told to protect someone else's well-being or preserve social harmony. Imagine a friend who has worked tirelessly on a creative project that, despite their best efforts, falls short. When they ask for your opinion, a blunt, honest critique could shatter their confidence. A small lie, framed with kindness and encouragement, might spare their feelings and motivate them to keep going. In those cases, dishonesty is not driven by a malice or a selfishness, but by a desire to avoid harm and support someone's emotional health. Another context where dishonesty might feel justified is in life or death situations. History is filled with stories of individuals who lied to protect others from harm. During times of war or persecution, many people have concealed the truth to save lives, risking their own safety in the process. These acts of deception are often celebrated as moral courage, highlighting the idea that the value of a lie can depend on its intent and outcome. Even in everyday life, we encounter moral dilemmas where honesty can feel cruel or unnecessary. Consider the social conventions that often encourage small lies to maintain politeness. Declining an invitation with a fabricated excuse, or complimenting a host's cooking even if it wasn't to your taste. These might be seen as a way to preserve relationships and avoid unnecessary conflict. While these lies may seem harmless, they still raise important questions about the balance between honesty and empathy. The philosophy of utilitarianism offers one framework for evaluating when dishonesty might be acceptable. Utilitarianism suggests that the morality of an action depends on its consequences, specifically when it maximizes happiness or minimizes harm. You see, from this perspective, a lie that prevents significant suffering or promotes the greater good could be considered ethically justified. However, this approach also requires careful consideration of the potential long-term consequences, as even well-intentioned lies have unintended effects. Now, at the same time, it's important to acknowledge the risks of using compassion as a justification for dishonesty. Lies, even those told with good intentions, can undermine trust if they're discovered. For example, shielding someone from painful truths might spare them from temporary discomfort, but it can also deny them the opportunity to confront reality and grow from the experience. Honesty, while difficult, often paves the way for deeper understanding and resilience. Navigating these moral gray areas requires self-awareness and ethical clarity. Before resorting to dishonesty, isn't it helpful to ask yourself some key questions? What is my intent? Who will benefit from this lie? What are the potential consequences for myself and others? By reflecting on these considerations, we'll put ourselves in a position to make more thoughtful decisions and avoid slipping into patterns of habitual deceit. It's also essential to recognize the role of cultural and social norms in shaping our perceptions of dishonesty. In some cultures, preserving harmony and avoiding conflict are prioritized over blunt honesty, while in others, truth-telling is held as a non-negotiable value. These cultural lenses influence how we approach moral dilemmas and whether we view certain lies as acceptable or not. Ultimately, the question of whether lies can ever be justified is deeply personal. It forces us to weigh our values, consider the impact of our actions, and reflect on the kind of person we want to be. While there may never be a universal answer, exploring these dilemmas help us better understand the complexities of dishonesty and deception. So now in this last part of the podcast, let's turn our focus to fostering a culture of honesty, exploring practical strategies for building trust, encouraging truthfulness, and navigating the inevitable challenges that come with striving for integrity in a complicated world. Honesty is more than just a moral ideal. It's the foundation of trust, connection, and integrity. Yet fostering a culture of honesty in ourselves, in our communities, it's not always straightforward. Truthfulness requires courage, self-awareness, and a commitment to values that often demand more from us than the path of deception. Encouraging honesty means not only holding ourselves accountable, but also creating environments where the truth feels safe and valued. At the heart of fostering this honesty lies in the concept of trust. Trust and honesty are inseparable, each reinforcing the other in a continuous cycle. When people feel trusted, they are more likely to be truthful. Conversely, dishonesty breeds suspicion, which can undermine relationships and create environments where lies feel necessary for self-preservation. Building trust begins with small, consistent actions, keeping promises, listening without judgment, showing empathy. These behaviors create the psychological safety that allows honesty to flourish. Open communication is another cornerstone of honesty. Encouraging truthfulness means creating spaces where people feel they can speak openly without fear or harsh consequences. In relationships, this might mean responding to difficult truths with compassion rather than anger. In workplaces, it might mean establishing policies that reward transparency and discourage retaliation for mistakes or whistleblowing. When people believe that the truth will be met with understanding and respect, they are more likely to embrace honesty as a way of life. For individuals, cultivating honesty starts with self-reflection. Being honest with others requires first being honest with yourself. This means confronting uncomfortable truths about your motivations, fears, and actions. Self-reflection helps us recognize the moments when we might be tempted to lie and understand why. Are we lying to protect ourselves, to avoid conflict, or to gain approval? By identifying these patterns, we can work toward making more intentional and ethical choices. Emotional intelligence plays a significant role in fostering honesty. Developing emotional intelligence allows us to navigate the complexities of truth-telling with empathy and tact. Honesty doesn't mean being brutally blunt or insensitive. It means delivering the truth in a way that respects the other person's dignity while staying true to your values. For example, instead of saying, "Your idea is terrible," you might say, "I see potential in your idea, but here's where I think it could be improved." This balance of honesty and kindness strengthens relationships rather than damaging them. If you've ever heard anybody say, "Oh, I am brutally honest," that is not something to be proud of, but rather something to work on. Being compassionately honest is a more altruistic pursuit. Encouraging honesty also involves addressing dishonesty constructively when it arises. When someone is caught in a lie, how we respond can either perpetuate the cycle of dishonesty or break it. Reacting with anger or punishment often leads to defensiveness and more lies. Instead, approach the situation with curiosity and understanding. Ask questions to uncover the underlying reasons for the dishonesty and explore ways to rebuild trust. This approach not only addresses the immediate issue, but also fosters an environment where truth feels safer in the future. In a broader societal context, fostering honesty means challenging norms that reward deception. For example, social media often incentivizes dishonesty by glorifying curated, exaggerated versions of reality. By promoting authenticity and celebrating vulnerability, authentic vulnerability, we can push back against these pressures and encourage a culture that values truth over appearance. Similarly, organizations and institutions can lead by example, prioritizing transparency and ethical practices in their operations and communications. Practicing honesty is not without challenges. Telling the truth can be uncomfortable, especially when it involves admitting mistakes, delivering difficult news, or confronting conflict. But the long-term benefits of honesty far outweigh the temporary discomfort. Truthfulness builds stronger relationships, enhances self-respect, and creates a sense of alignment between your actions and your values. Encouraging honesty requires a collective effort. It starts with individuals making the choice to prioritize truth in their daily lives and extends to communities, workplaces, and societies that uphold honesty as a shared value. By embracing honesty with courage and compassion, we can create a world where trust thrives, connections deepen, and integrity becomes the norm. Dishonesty is a complicated and deeply human behavior. It reflects our fears, desires, and vulnerabilities, revealing as much about who we are as the truths we choose to share. We lie for many reasons: to protect ourselves, to spare others, to achieve our goals, or sometimes simply because it feels easier than confronting reality. Yet, as we've explored, dishonesty comes at a cost, not only to our relationships and society, but also to our own sense of integrity and self-worth. At the same time, understanding the psychology of dishonesty allows us to approach it with compassion, both for ourselves and others. Lies, like all behaviors, stem from underlying motivations, whether it's fear, insecurity, or even love. By recognizing these drivers, we can work toward creating environments where honesty feels safe and achievable. It's not about striving for perfection, but about making intentional choices to align our actions with our values. Honesty is not always easy, and it doesn't guarantee comfort, but it does offer something far greater: authenticity, trust, and of course the opportunity to build deeper connections with ourselves and those around us. Choosing honesty is choosing courage. It's choosing to show up as your true self, even when it feels vulnerable. So as we close this episode, I invite you to reflect on your own relationship with honesty. How does it show up in your life? What motivates you to tell the truth or to hold it back? And most importantly, how can you cultivate a life where truth feels not only possible, but empowering?
That wraps up this episode of The Psychology of Us with Professor R.J. Starr. Each conversation is a step toward greater understanding of ourselves, each other, and the forces that shape human behavior. Listeners are invited to continue the conversation by sharing their thoughts, questions, and topic suggestions at profrjstarr@outlook.com. Every message helps shape future episodes, ensuring the discussions remain relevant
thought-provoking, and meaningful. For those who find value in these explorations, subscribing and leaving a review is a great way to support the podcast and bring these insights to a wider audience. Until next time, stay curious, stay thoughtful, and keep exploring the psychology of us.